the one that really stood out the most for me was, putting tear gas on a peaceful protesters in Lafayette Park, simply so he could have a tough guy walk to the church to try to do a photo op with a Bible. I just remember the statement, when fascism comes to America, it'll be wrapped in a flag and carrying the cross. And in this case, it was a Bible. That scene, I think, really exploded in a bad way for him, because I have seen a number of people who are more moderate or conservative, but who are people of faith, really upset that this guy, who clearly doesn't care about the Bible one way or the other, if he walked in that church, he could probably put his finger in the communal water and it would boil. This guy, it really has exploded on, because no one believes that he was sincere, and yet he shows he'll do anything to anyone for a photo op. So, to me, that was, and his continuing trying to use troops when we're trying to deal with police violence, having more violence of that sort isn't going to solve anything. So it's been a tough week. I think he succeeded in getting COVID off the front page of the paper, but I'm still dealing with that very intently, because this week many small businesses are running out of their PPP loan. This is week 8 for them. And because the Senate hasn't come to act, we have nothing to do to help people who are unemployed and small business owners and frontline workers and others. So there's just an awful lot going on. And Donald Trump, unfortunately, is at the center of causing all those problems, like you said.
Yeah, three quick questions, which may really kind of be just one before we get to, and then we'll pick up our calls for the rest of the hour.
Sure.
You guys passed a pretty massive piece of legislation to address the economic crisis that's been caused by COVID. It's out of the House. It's over at the Senate. Mitch McConnell, instead, he's keeping the Senate in session so that he can, I think he's up to 189 judges or something like that, so that they can get these judges in. What's up with that, and what do you think is going to happen with that, number one? And then number 2 and 3 is the Defense Authorization Act, which is required by the Constitution. Every 2 years we have to decide if we're going to have an army or not. That's happening. And also the Patriot Act reauthorization, I believe, is up. And I'm wondering if I've read news reports. The Progressive Caucus, which you're the co-chair of, has some very specific concerns with those two pieces of legislation, particularly when it has to do with police powers, Donald Trump powers, and spying powers. What's up here?
Sure. So first of all, on the Senate, you're right. They're not addressing COVID or anything else. They're just trying to get more conservative judges in spots, which shows where their priority is and why they're not at the table negotiating with the House Democrats, who did pass the HEROES Act, which puts about $3 trillion into the economy to help people who are hurting right now. Specifically on 2 pieces of legislation you mentioned, we did just actually not pass the FISA reauthorization, essentially the allowing government to spy bill, because we had some concerns. We wanted to make it better, and because the Progressive Caucus didn't give them votes, they had to hold it up, and it's going to come back at another time, but we're hoping that they'll make it better rather than worse. On the NDAA, 29 of us, Barbara Lee and I, initiated a letter that we were joined by a total of 29 of us, who has said that, the $738 billion for defense, which is a 20% increase, Tom, in the last 3 years at a time of peace, that should be cut back and money should go to COVID, because that's the real common enemy we all have. And I think most people would agree with doing that. So we're still trying to affect that bill if we can. But we do have, I think, some leverage moving forward. So you'll also see some amendments, I think, related to the president's abuse of the military, especially in relates to going against protesters. So there's a lot of action going to be happening. We're officially back in session June 30th, but I've got the feeling we may be in sooner to address some of the things around race relations right now. We really need to act, I think, in Congress much sooner.
Great. Okay, well, let's pick up phone calls here. Lou in Pueblo,
Sure.
Colorado. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I want to bring up an issue. I mean, voting by mail is great and so on, but what we really need to do. I'd like to know if there's anything going on to guarantee the right to vote, because the greatest voter suppression of all, to me, is allowing 10 hours every 4 years to vote for president. We can make it a week. We can do voting by mail, but let's guarantee the right to vote.
Yeah, Lou, I hear you. In fact, I am the author of a constitutional amendment that would guarantee the right to vote, because unfortunately, what we learned from a number of court cases is there is not an explicit right to vote in the Constitution. We certainly talk about discrimination in voting, but there's not an explicit right. And if we had what you're talking about, an explicit right in there, the burden is not on someone saying they've been harmed by their local or state government because of the voting rules. Instead, the burden is on that local or state government to prove they haven't harmed the individual's right, constitutional right, to vote. So to me, that is the platinum standard that we still should have. In fact, I believe when you become a citizen, one of the questions is, what's your most important right as an American? And the answer is the right to vote, although technically there is not a constitutional right to vote. But, with Mitch McConnell and the president right now, they're acting more like despots and dictators these days. I think, we have to build that grassroots case for this. You're right. But what we can try to affect right now in localities and states is making sure we have vote by mail so that everyone can vote. So I still think those efforts are extremely worthy.
We have about 20 seconds to a break here, Congressman. Do you know of any Republicans who support the right to vote or would support such
They'll all
legislation?
tell you they do, but as soon as you get to putting any language on paper, they don't actually support it. They still want to pick their voters rather than voters picking their elected officials. And it's been an age-old problem with that.
Yeah. Okay, Congressman Mark Pocan is with us. It's Middays with Mark on the Thom Hartmann Program, our every Wednesday national town hall meeting with Congressman Mark Pocan, the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, representing the 2nd District of the state of Wisconsin in the U.S. House of Representatives. Pocan.house.gov is his website. You can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan, as in representative. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
More of your calls for Congressman Pocan throughout the hour, right after this. And welcome back. Morris in Long Beach, California. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning to both of you. Congressman, has there been one piece of legislation that the House of Representatives has passed, the Senate has endorsed, and Donald Trump has signed since he's been in office? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no, there have been, Morris, but they're not. There's not a lot that are of serious consequence. We have sent over, and I'm going to paraphrase the numbers right now, but I want to say it's 400 or so bills, bipartisan bills, on 3/4 of them that have gone to the Senate. The Senate's just sitting on and not passing. So, really the problem has been in many ways Mitch McConnell and the do-nothing Senate. Other than passing conservative judges and approving them, they really aren't up for doing much else that you're supposed to as a legislative body. And we haven't had the success that we'd like to. But there have been more inconsequential and some maybe bills that you might call consequential, some things you must pass that we've got done, but it's certainly not functioning at all how the Saturday morning how a bill becomes a law cartoon taught us many years ago.
Jessica in Chicago, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi. I want to know how Congress can protect the black and Hispanic truck drivers that go to the southern states from being murdered. My friend's brother was murdered in Kentucky on Saturday. He was a truck driver. They took his IDs, they took his wallet, they couldn't identify the body, they stole everything from the truck. My friend's mom got the call Monday night. They're in Kentucky. The evil thing in the White House emboldens racists, and I want to know what can be done to get the word out so these blacks and Hispanic truck drivers are safe.
Yeah, Jessica, I'm so sorry to hear that story. I don't know of it firsthand, but thank you for sharing that. And, this is what you said is exactly right. When you have someone in the White House with the world's biggest bully pulpit, whose job is to unify people of the nation, and instead He only finds ways to divide them and cause fear and consternation so that he personally can try to benefit politically. He's the worst of the worst, right? And unfortunately, right now, at a time we really need someone to be that Barack Obama unifier, even Republicans who've done these roles in the past, we don't have that in the White House. What I can tell you is we've had calls from the Congressional Progressive Caucus with leadership from the Congressional Black Caucus. We are working on a package of bills the CPC is going to be leading, many already introduced, some that we are introducing, and we want to get action soon on those. We think it's imperative that Congress act. We can do that still remotely with thanks to the way we can do proxy voting, but I don't think we can wait till June 30th when we go back. This is something that needs to happen sooner, and there are some concrete measures that will help make sure that we can have better laws in place that protect more people and go after some of the abuses that we've really seen from the police and hopefully stop the president from continuing doing what he's doing.
We have 10 seconds. Any specific legislation you'd like to highlight?
One we're writing right now is trying to, there's no uniform standard for training of police officers in this country, and there should be. There's a uniform training you need to drive a truck. I think there should be if you're going to be a cop.
There you go. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. It's Middays with Mark on the Thom Hartmann Program, our national town hall meeting here every Wednesday. We'll be back in just a moment with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan. You can find his website at Pocan, POCAN.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep, as in Representative, Rep Mark Pocan. We'll be right back. Our 1 hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3 hour podcast available over at ThomHartmann.com if you want to really support our program. So over at ThomHartmann.com, we just put up a new video for our supporters, the people who support our program, that talks about Malcolm X saying, if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are oppressed and loving the people who are the oppressors. He said that 55 years ago to, this month, February, in 1965. And, what that actually means, how that warning from Malcolm X was apparently taken to heart by the Republican Party in 1981 through the Reagan presidency. And we actually saw this shift in America to the point where, that led to everything. Stop and frisk and the demonization of homeless people and the demonization of poor people and black people and Muslim people and all of this stuff came out of this very specific kind of Lee Atwater strategy in the 1980s. So you can find it over at ThomHartmann.com and check it out. Congressman Mark Pocan is on the line with us, taking your calls for the hour. Brett in Windsor, Colorado. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, guys, thanks so much for taking my call. Tom, first of all, I want to tell you I'm a longtime listener since the Air America days and Brunch with Bernie and all that stuff. A buddy of mine back in the day after the 2000 election fiasco, a good buddy of mine introduced me to your work and sent me We the People, Call to Take Back America. And after reading that great read, I became an instant fan, and I've shared that book with several friends and family over the years. And I think it ought to be required reading for any kind of civic study going on in our country. But Congressman Pocan, thanks for joining the show. It's great to have you every week. Tom, back in 2008 or 9, you had Jeff Sharlet on the show, and he wrote the book The Family, something about the family. I read that book years ago. And when I saw Trump's stunt with the Bible in front of the church, it just brought that book right back for me. And I was wondering with the congressman and you, if you had any insights or thoughts on that. I look at Mike Pence's rise to power, and I just can't help but continuing to think about Jeff Sharlet's work.
Yeah, Brett, I'll tell you, my observation from what the president did is, this is a charlatan. who believes in nothing but Donald Trump. He worships Donald Trump, and anything he does is for Donald Trump. He's a reality show star who became the president, who decided that this was the photo op he needed at this moment to try to be the law and order president, using those words to really strike a very fearful racist tone to continue to double and triple down for parts of his base. So he gassed a group of peaceful protesters so he could take this tough guy walk after he hid in the bunker on the Friday before, which seems to bother him, although personally, I mean, I think that's something that any president, it might occur, but, he couldn't take it, his ego. So he did that walk there, and then he did that terrible stunt for a photo op. And, his office called it iconic. I think it's more ironic. I mean, this is a guy who didn't even know how to hold the book and couldn't even answer a question if it was his own Bible. And then I saw an interview recently when he talked about, they asked him about his favorite Bible verses, and he just gave a bunch of word scrabble out about it. This guy's a charlatan. But I think this blew up in his face. I have seen multiple sources of moderate to conservative Christians, not folks that are far, far right, evangelicals, but people who just were offended that he's using the Bible as a prop. And I think it really didn't work in the way he intended, and I think that's good because we need the additional allies to do this fight right. And it's just, again, disgusting that a president of the United States, instead of unifying people, is continuing to divide people. So, again, every time I think Donald Trump can't go lower, boy, he finds a way to do it.
Karen in Tempe, Arizona, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Congressman, and hi, Tom. I have a question about nuclear power and the use by Donald Trump. Let's say Donald loses the next election. I hope so. But anyhow, he's got the time frame from November until January. Do you think that there's a possibility that he would use the bomb? This scares me. This man's crazy. And I worry about that because he could get himself away from Washington, hide somewhere, and have God knows what blown up. Do you think that's a possibility? Do you think he would do that? I am terrified of this man because he's so crazy. And thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Yeah, Karen, I hear you. And obviously, because this guy is so untrustworthy, you could put anything next to his name and not be shocked that he would do it. However, as I said before, I think the number one priority for Donald Trump is Donald Trump. And if he thinks that could affect people staying in his hotels or buying his condos, he's unlikely to do that because Donald Trump is only looking out for Donald Trump. So I'm not directly concerned that that's something that's going to happen. But, I don't want to say never with this guy on just about anything. I think we've got to keep a real check on him. And the best way we do that is we've got to make sure he goes down in November. I think he'll scramble those last 2 months to figure out how to profitize the office. And at least that's less damage than something like you're suggesting, Karen.
Yeah, we have about 20 seconds. What are the impediments to his using nuclear weapons?
Well, I mean, I think if he loses at that point, a lot of people are going to realize that, he's no longer dangerous to them electorally, and they might stand up and do something. I mean, we've watched a lot of people be very weak-willed for the last year, but I think at that point, it's a good chance the Senate goes down with him, and there may be whoever's going to try to rebuild the party, I think, react. So that's my hope anyway.
Well, that's an optimistic perspective and a good one. That's great. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour. It's Middays with Mark, our Wednesday National Town Hall meeting with the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, Congressman Mark Pocan. We'll be back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan in just a moment. You can check out his website at pocan.house.gov.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And you can tweet him at Rep Mark Pocan. We'll be right back. Well, it's Wednesday, and we are rolling along, and we need your help. And great news today. Andrew in San Diego has put up $10,000 $1,000 as a match. So if you give $10 today, Free Speech TV gets 20. If you give $100 today, Free Speech gets 200. If you give $1,000 today, Free Speech gets 2,000. If you give $5,000 today, Free Speech TV gets 10,000. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help Free Speech TV out. This is a real tough time for organizations like Free Speech TV that are supported by their viewers. The kind of programming that we do, where we, say it as it is not the sort of thing that, big corporations are eager to throw money at. And beyond that, Free Speech TV is a nonprofit, and, they're just set up to say, no, we want to be of, by, and for our viewers. And that's what Free Speech TV is, and that's how you can help us. You can help Free Speech TV right now by calling 877-378-8669. It's a tough time for everybody. I know, we're in a political season, so there's enormous competition for campaign cash. I'm now literally every day getting a fundraising email from the Biden campaign, and pretty much every day from the Trump campaign. Occasionally I read them to you on the air. They're somewhere between obscene and absurd. But the point is that at the same time that half the country's unemployed, there's a lot of need, a lot of great organizations that are doing great stuff, from food banks to media. And then we've got, on top of that, the politicians asking for money. So it's a real tough time for Free Speech TV, frankly. And we've got to pay the bills. We've got to cover the cost of all these electrons, happily making their way up through the sky to you. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV so that we can keep this program on the air on this network. Free Speech TV is the premier progressive network in the country, anyway. I don't know about the world, I was about to say, but Free Speech TV is now available to the world. They're on freespeech.org, where you can actually watch the program. In fact, we get calls, and just in the last week, we had calls from Israel, we had a call from Mexico, we had a call from Ireland. There's another country or two in there. So we're having some significant reach, and we're having, I think, a considerable impact. And it's because of you. If you have supported Free Speech TV up to this point, whether it's financial, or if you can't afford to give financial support, whether it's simply, sharing the word with your friends and getting 2 or 3 new people to watch Free Speech TV, and I know that's happening. I'm hearing from callers all the time. Hey, I just discovered your program. Somebody told me about it. That's how that impact is spreading. So everything you give today will be doubled with Andrew's $10,000 match. With a $20 gift, you have your choice between the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or the I'm Voting Are You car magnet. With a $50 gift, you have your choice between the Just Effing Vote tote bag and the Free Speech TV webcam cover. With a $75 gift, uniquely, you can get the Thom Hartmann Program mug with my face on it. With a $100 gift, there's the Free Speech TV face masks. With a $125 gift, or $120 gift, you have your choice of 4 options. The social distancing kit, which is the 2 Free Speech TV face masks and the Free Speech TV branded hand sanitizer. The Just Effing Vote t-shirt. The Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt. Or my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, which exposes how the Republicans have figured out that they can't win elections except by cheating. And I just go through chapter and verse about how they cheat and the long history of that in the United States. The $240 gift, you can join us on Free Speech TV, or join us, on a Zoom call, and or join me on a Zoom call with a small number of other people, and we'll talk about the things we can't talk about on the air, or that we do, as the case may be. With a $360 gift, there's the Free Speech TV face mask, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, Just Effing Vote tote bag, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, Just Effing Vote t-shirt, and with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and we'll see you here. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Please call now. It's so important during a really critical time like this. Our democracy is teetering on a knife's edge. It's so important that we have media, progressive media, that's telling the truth about what's going on in America. And not just telling the truth, acting in some cases as a nexus for information. You know, Amy Goodman's program, my program, Randy Rhodes, David Sonali. I mean, there is such great programming on this network with such important information that is so critical, frankly, to the preservation, the survival of democracy in this country. You know, I've been concerned about the rise of fascism on this program for 16 years, but now it seems like it's right in our face. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help us keep this extraordinary television network on the air. Coming up on this week's Science Revolution, how do we stop authoritarians like Trump and Bolsonaro from killing more people in this pandemic? Trump and Bolsonaro, the presidents of the United States and Brazil, are essentially refusing to do anything consequential about an epidemic that is killing massive numbers of their own country's citizens. Bill Freese drops by. He's the science policy analyst with the Center for Food Safety on the newly finalized federal regulations on GMOs. And Beyond Nuclear's Paul Gunter also drops by on how America is unprepared for a nuclear accident during this pandemic. Find the Science Revolution wherever you get great podcasts. Welcome back. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, taking your calls. Middays with Mark, our national town hall meeting with the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and Mark in Sauk City, Wisconsin. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, Mark. I miss seeing you. When I worked down at the Capitol, I used to see you all the time, and we used to have some good discussions. I'm interested to hear if the I'm interested to hear if the Congress is going to do anything about Matt Gaetz's recent comments about just shooting people, and also you brought up voting rights, just being, that there's not enough there. I mean, there's nothing in I've mentioned this to Tom before, there's nothing in the Constitution, according to Hamilton in 81, Federalist 81, that there's nothing in the Constitution that empowers the Supreme Court to have jurisdiction over our laws. I mean, to make decisions over our laws, and it's just a right they seized upon themselves, for themselves. I mean, and there's enough in the 15th, 19th, and 24th, and also the amendment for the voting rights for 18-year-olds in the Constitution that should actually provide the structure for that we actually do have the right to vote under the Constitution.
Yeah, so Mark, on the first one, unfortunately, Matt Gaetz loves to do sensational things just so that, the cameras come to him. I followed him outside one time after voting, and TMZ came up in his face and asked him something about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and he just said, I wouldn't swipe left. And after the camera walked away, I said, did you really think you're going to do that today? And he's like, that's what I do. That's who I am. So, unfortunately, his comments will go by. I think, like other things he's done have gone by, and it's just unfortunate that people like that are such sycophants to the president that they'll do and say anything, and unfortunately they get reelected. The right to vote stuff, we've done a lot of work on this, and it really came out of some Bush v. Gore stuff, that it came out that there is not an explicit right to vote. So we worked with the voting rights groups and some of the other good democracy groups around this, introduced it, I think, first 3 sessions ago. I could be wrong, maybe 4. But there actually is a need to have an explicit right if you want to switch the burden from individuals proving they're harmed to the government proving they can't harm anyone. It really would be the gold or the platinum standard you need. But we do need to do that to really make it much easier than have this whack-a-mole fight we have right now state by state on voting.
Ted in Milton, New York. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Tom, and hi, Representative Pocan. Tom, we actually met almost a year ago today.
Oh, cool.
So my question for Representative Pocan, I contacted my representative to ask if he would be willing to submit articles of impeachment against the president. I'm just calling to ask, to take your temperature on that.
I'm sorry. So you're asking to introduce or to vote? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Well, we support it. If you did support it, somebody else didn't.
I don't think it's going to go anywhere, right? I mean, we saw the Senate. It took a long time to put the case together last time to do the impeachment trial. We did impeach him. He's already impeached. The problem is the Senate went through the removal. So I don't know if that's really the most useful thing we could do with our time, but I do think checks on his power and not allowing him to get away with what he's doing with the military and those issues are things we absolutely should be doing. In the House, we're not technically back in until June 30th. I personally think we should have a special session to deal with legislation around race relations in this country. I think we need to act sooner and faster, but that's just my preference.
Mary in Waterloo, Iowa, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, Congressman Pocan. I would like to see, like you sent out the $1,200 checks, to up to $60,000 income. I would like to see a food stamp similar program to all people, for instance, lower than $40,000. More farm goods be getting to the stores, and people would have more of a variety. Plus, people would have this extra income if they got a small income. So I think giving food stamps would be a much better way of distributing food to the people than all these lines that we're seeing for the food bank. Also, they'd be getting more fruits and vegetables. When you go to a food bank, you don't know what you're getting. And these children need a steady diet. And I think food stamps under $40,000 to every person would really increase money in pockets of the poor people and get a better supply of food to the people.
I hear you, Mary. Unfortunately, one of the things the Republicans really fight, and I don't understand why, is food stamps. We know that the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP program, which is commonly known by as food stamps, is one of the best ways to keep children out of poverty. And yet, the real dollars amount, not even the adjusted for inflation, real dollar amount is less now than when I came into Congress per week per person. So we've had, unfortunately, enormous fights on getting that done. Right now, I know we're concerned that some of the buying food from farms, including areas like Waterloo and my area in South Central and Southwestern Wisconsin, is not buying as much as we would hope and distributing as much as we would hope, because there's also a lot of surplus, as you know, out there, and we would like to get those goods out. So not saying your idea is not a valid one. I just think, unfortunately, given the experience of that program over the last 7.5 years I've been in Congress, I don't think the Republicans are likely to do much that's unfortunately good in an area that really reduces poverty more than almost any program.
David in Columbus, Ohio, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hello, Congressman. I recently heard about a bill introduced by a congressman from Hawaii that would restrict military weapons, take them out of the hands of the police. I don't think the police should be overly armed. They should be more working with the community rather than strapping on all this armor and all this other junk. Well, have you supported that bill?
Yeah, actually, Hank Johnson has a bill. He's out of Georgia. I'm not sure. I'm guessing right now multiple people will introduce stuff, but Hank Johnson has traditionally had a bill, and I voted for that in the past when we've had it as amendments for the NDAA, et cetera. Yeah, I am supportive of that effort. I don't think, necessarily drafting a dozen new bills is helpful, although a lot of people just like to do it to say they're doing something. But Hank Johnson has already done the work on that, and he was on our Progressive Caucus call. He's our member, and talked about it a little bit for our membership yesterday.
Les in Tacoma, Washington, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. With the history and continued enforcement of the mental illness of white supremacy that is supported through the use of police brutality, so evident in the protests across our nation, is hindering the progress in our nation. I'm a black man because of the construct of whiteness. We must educate our young people of how the systematic racism stacked the deck to populate this country with the supermajority of Europeans. So my question is, what accountability can Congress, the Senate, and the judicial branch of government take in dismantling the construct of whiteness that is hindering the progress of our nation?
Yeah, Les. So it's funny. One, I mean, we know the CBC is putting a group of bills together, as is Judiciary Committee. We've put a call out for the Progressive Caucus. I'm actually in the middle of texting right now with my co-chair on some of these issues. There's going to be a number of bills, I think, that'll help. The problem is, we're going to face the Senate we have and the president we have, but we're going to pass them. And we're not back in session technically till June 30th. I think we should be in a week or two, have a week for committee process and get this done. I think waiting till June 30th is a mistake. And I think we should be moving a little quicker on legislation. But there are a number of bills that are moving forward. They're going to help, I think, level the playing field, help put some greater restrictions on the police abuses that we've seen. But is it going to end the systematic
here.
Yeah, well, I think, again,
well, actually, we have 20 seconds.
Barrier.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think, again, that's something that we definitely should be looking at. There's a lot of things. I mean, again, there's no one bill or one answer to the questions that are out there. That's why I think, one of my approaches has been, let's just make sure everyone's got the same amount of training across the country so that you have, when you're a police officer, it means a definition rather than what currently it can mean anything, depending where you encounter an officer.
National standards. It's great. We'll be back with more of your calls for Congressman Mark Pocan in just a moment. He represents the 2nd District of Wisconsin. He's the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. His website, pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at @RepMarkPocan. We'll be right back. It's coming up on 10 minutes before the hour. Thom Hartmann here. Did you know that the Second Amendment was written to protect the slave patrols in South Carolina and Georgia back in the day? It's in my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, available wherever you find great books. We have a special video up over at thomhartmann.com for supporters of our program, and it's about how a letter that the IRS sent out to 3.9 million Americans saved 700 lives. And you're like, wait a minute, the IRS saved 700 lives? How did that happen? Well, it has to do with Obamacare, and it's a fascinating story. And it turns out that this analysis of this IRS mailing was actually the first time that the federal government has done a study that actually proved that people having access to health care produces fewer deaths. For every 1,648 people who got the letter, there was one fewer premature death. I'll explain the whole thing in the video. It's as I said, it's available over at thomhartmann.com for people who are regular supporters of our program, and it is really worth checking out. And it's a great ad, essentially, for a national health care system. Henderson, Nevada, you are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning. Talk about irony. To provide a photo op at the expense of our Constitution, our Attorney General and President used unlawful force and tear gas yesterday against peaceful protesters to grab a photo op in front of a church holding up a holy Christian Bible. The irony is that the Bible he was holding inside says adulterers like himself, after paying off a porn star, should be put to death. Calls it a sin to lie, which is his daily rhetoric. Calls it a sin to bear false witness, and urges people to love their neighbor and says, "Thou shalt not kill." While playing, which he's doing by...
So, Mike, what's your question for the congressman?
Okay, well, being that he used the Attorney General and the force yesterday, how can we protect our constitutional right to free speech and assembly and hold the President and the Attorney General accountable?
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, Mike, I mean, so first of all, I don't think he succeeded in what he did. He never should have did what he did in order to do that photo op, and I think the pushback has been very negative for him. I mean, it's cost him, I think, a lot. He made a serious miscalculation. But now you've got the Secretary of Defense saying that we shouldn't be using military personnel in that way, and I think he's going to see some other pushback on that as well. And that's good, because that means people at least are thinking on their own a little about this issue. So, I think we need to be prepared as well as we pass the National Defense Authorization and other bills to make it very explicit that the president doesn't have some of these powers. But right now, I was very glad to see Secretary of Defense say that, because I think that will provide some of the pushback that we need.
Jeffrey in, is it Catonsville or Catonsville? Maryland?
Cadensville.
Cadensville. Okay, you are on the air.
I was just wondering, are you planning, is Pocan going to be bringing up trying to bring up the program to forgive student loan debt? Forgive student loan debt. that was vetoed by Trump?
I'm a little bit of a loss, Jeffrey, because I'm not sure of something specifically vetoed by President Trump. I'm sorry.
Is there going to be an effort to forgive student loan debt? More general?
We had that, I believe, in the CARES Act stuff, and I believe there is some in the HEROES Act. It did get scaled back last minute a little bit, I think, because overall dollars, there really was a kind of a fixation on it couldn't go over $3 trillion. Part of the problem, Tom, is when the CBO scores anything, they put it entirely in that bill. So if you do some changes, it can really look like it's adding a lot to the bill, even though it's not expending money. And I think there was some pushback from some of our members on not going above that figure. So I know that was the amount was shrunk a little bit going into the HEROES Act, but I'm just not familiar of anything that was vetoed. I apologize.
Okay. Laura in Chicago, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah. Hi, Congressman, and hi, Tom. I can't help but think that some of the looting and lawlessness over the last couple of days is in direct relationship to the shutting down of the economy and not giving anybody work or enough money to survive. It's really, I think, one of the stimulating factors behind a lot of the lawlessness. But I wanted to ask you what you thought about, you were talking about uniform training. I really believe that the police should be a profession. They should be required to have a 4-year degree, and they should be licensed with continuing education requirements and to hold their own liability, to carry their own liability. And this would stop the kind of military to police force pipeline. They would have to go to college before they went into the police force, because I think that is a major problem with some of our really, really aggressive cops. What do you think?
She's describing the European system. Thoughts?
Yeah, I'm open to all sorts of suggestions on this, right? I don't know if necessarily a 4-year degree is what's required, but I do think adequate training across the board, no matter where you are in the country, the law enforcement officer should have the same competent training. Right now, the average is 12 to 14 weeks of police academy, but a lot of jurisdictions don't have that. In fact, we're having a hard time getting what the requirements are, and that alone is a problem in finding across the board. So, I think that and some standards of what they're learning and what's being taught should also be put in there so we can have a little more control over it. But, I'm not saying it just goes to the case of George Floyd, but to many of these cases, not having the proper training, I think, has come up over and over and over. And that's why I thought about this for years. Why, a truck driver has to have a common set of knowledge and common test in order to drive a big rig, which protects the lives of so should be for police.
Yeah, and a license. Congressman, thanks so much for dropping by today. It's great talking with you again.
Of course, Tom. Thank you. Take care.
Okay. Yep. Have a great one. We'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls in just a moment. I've got quite a list for you, actually. Stick around. We'll be right
back. You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
So we have a new video up for people who are supporters of the Thom Hartmann Program. Specifically, it's over at thomhartmann.com, talking about language, how we use language. Language matters tremendously. And we have chosen as a society, as a culture, as media, as political leadership, et cetera, not to refer to people like Steve Mnuchin, who threw thousands of people out of their homes illegally during the banking crisis, as looters, not to refer to Rex Tillerson, whose oil company has ravaged much of the third world, literally destroying people's lives, killing people, poisoning people. We don't refer to them as looters. We don't refer to the police who go into neighborhoods and kill people, minorities, particularly African Americans. We don't refer to them as looters, stealing their lives. But when black people rise up and say, no, enough, we call them looters. There's something wrong with this. Check it out. It's at thomhartmann.com. Well, it's Wednesday, and we are rolling along, and we need your help. And great news today. Andrew in San Diego has put up $10,000 as a match. So if you give $10 today, Free Speech TV gets 20. If you give $100 today, Free Speech gets 200. If you give $1,000 today, Free Speech gets 2,000. If you give $5,000 today, Free Speech TV gets 10,000. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help Free Speech TV out. This is a real tough time for organizations like Free Speech TV that are supported by their viewers. The kind of programming that we do, where we, say it as it is not the sort of thing that, big corporations are eager to throw money at. And beyond that, Free Speech TV is a nonprofit, and, they're just set up to say, no, we want to be of, by, and for our viewers. And that's what Free Speech TV is. And that's how you can help us. You can help Free Speech TV right now by calling 877-378-8669. It's a tough time for everybody. I know, we're in a political season, so there's enormous competition for campaign cash. I'm now literally every day getting a fundraising email from the Biden campaign, and pretty much every day from the Trump campaign. Occasionally I read them to you on the air. They're somewhere between obscene and absurd. But the point is that at the same time that half the country is unemployed, there's a lot of need, a lot of great organizations that are doing great stuff, from food banks to media. And then we've got, on top of that, the politicians asking for money. So it's a real tough time for Free Speech TV, frankly. And we've got to pay the bills. We've got to cover the cost of all these electrons, happily making their way up through the sky to you. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV so that we can keep this program on the air on this network. Free Speech TV is the premier progressive network in the country, anyway. I don't know about the world, I was about to say, but Free Speech TV is now available to the world. They're on freespeech.org, where you can actually watch the program. In fact, we get calls, and just in the last week, we had calls from Israel, we had a call from Mexico, we had a call from Ireland. There's another country or two in there. So we're having some significant reach, and we're having, I think, a considerable impact. And it's because of you. If you have supported Free Speech TV up to this point, whether it's financial, or if you can't afford to give financial support, whether it's simply, sharing the word with your friends and getting 2 or 3 new people to watch Free Speech TV, and I know that's happening. I'm hearing from callers all the time. Hey, I just discovered your program. Somebody told me about it. That's how that impact is spreading. So everything you give today will be doubled with Andrew's $10,000 match. With a $20 gift, you have your choice between the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or the I'm Voting Are You car magnet. With a $50 gift, you have your choice between the Just Effing Vote tote bag and the Free Speech TV webcam cover. With a $75 gift, uniquely, you can get the Thom Hartmann Program mug with my face on it. With a $100 gift, there's the Free Speech TV face masks. With a $125 gift, or $120 gift, you have your choice of 4 options. The social distancing kit, which is the 2 Free Speech TV face masks and the Free Speech TV branded hand sanitizer. The Just Effing Vote t-shirt. The Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt. Or my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, which exposes how the Republicans have figured out that they can't win elections except by cheating. And I just go through chapter and verse about how they cheat and the long history of that in the United States. The $240 gift, you can join us on Free Speech TV, or join us, on a Zoom call, and or join me on a Zoom call with a small number of other people, and we'll talk about the things we can't talk about on the air, or that we do, as the case may be. With a $360 gift, there's the Free Speech TV face mask, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, Just Effing. It's so important that we have media, progressive media, that's telling the truth about what's going on in America. And not just telling the truth, acting in some cases as a nexus for information. You know, Amy Goodman's program, my program, Randy Rhodes, David Sonali. I mean, there is such great programming on this network with such important information that is so critical, frankly, to the preservation, the survival of democracy in this country. You know, I've been concerned about the rise of fascism on this program for 16 years, but now it seems like it's right in our face. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help us keep this extraordinary television network on the air.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back to the second hour of our program. You know, as I briefly referenced to Congressman Pocan, Donald Trump campaigned on nostalgia for the past. We're going to make America great again. And sure enough, he has brought us the past. He has brought back the deaths, the widespread deaths associated with the pandemic of 1918. He has brought back unemployment, hunger, poverty, economic distress and despair and disaster across the nation, as we saw in the Republican Great Depression of 1929. He's brought back the rise of white supremacy, and white supremacist organizations are reorganizing and reinventing themselves the way the Klan did in the 1870s after the failure of Reconstruction. He's brought back the race riots of the 1960s, and once again setting our cities on fire, which raises the question that I toss to you. What else do you think Trump is going to bring back? Is he going to bring back another world war? We've had 2 of those. Is he going to bring back another smaller war with some other country? We've had, we had the War of 1812. We had a war with Canada and England. We had a war with Spain in Cuba, with the Spanish-American War. We had a war with Mexico. Is that on his agenda? Is he gonna try and bring back the Civil War? I think he thought that was a great time for America. Only 600,000-700,000 Americans died there. He's already killed over 104,000 of us. Or his negligence has led to the death of 104,000 of us, while other countries, like Australia and Taiwan, have fewer than a couple dozen people dead in the same period of time. I mean, it's just what is it going to be? Or is he going to take us in an entirely new direction, taking us back to the past of some other country? For example, is he going to try to repeat the rise of fascism in Europe? Is he going to make America like Italy was in 1928? Or is he going to try to bring back a military coup like al-Sisi did in Egypt or like Pinochet did in Chile? Or is he planning on a new brutal takedown, a crackdown like in Tiananmen Square? I mean, this guy's still got 6 months to go, assuming Congress doesn't impeach him, which I think is pretty safe to assume. So, between now and January, what kind of holy hell can he bring down on this country? It's frankly a very troubling question. There was a post this morning that I thought was particularly humorous is not quite the right word, but Helen Kennedy was tweeting this morning a photo. Actually, Jackson Proskow tweeted the photo originally of this line of police surrounding the White House right now with their shields that they're holding and whatnot. And it turns out they're prison guards. He's brought federal prison riot control officers to surround the White House. Is this Donald Trump getting ready for his post-presidency? He's just kind of getting used to being surrounded by prison guards? One could hope, I suppose. Our frequent caller to the program, Kenyatta, sent me a note this morning pointing out, and I did not know this. This, frankly, shocked me, that in the 240-year history of the United States, there's a Wikipedia category for this. It's American police officers convicted of murder. In 240 years, how many police officers have been convicted of murder? 20. And several of them were serial killers. Several of them killed their wives. A couple of them were killing people on behalf of the mob. I haven't gone through the whole entire list. We kind of ran out of time this morning, but I had not, when I was halfway, a little more than halfway through that list of the 20 of them, I still hadn't seen a single one who was convicted of killing a black man. Just absolutely incredible. David Sirota does a newsletter called Too Much Information, TMI. It's over, I'm not sure the exact website for that newsletter, but I'm sure that there's a link to it at davidsirota.com. And, David just does great work. David and I have worked together over the years in radio. He used to be involved with Air America Radio. He used to have a show on our Air America affiliate in Denver. And he has a list of things that we should be doing right now. And I want to share this with you because I think it's brilliant. A list of things that we could do to deal with the crisis right now that we have of these police riots. I mean, we saw the police riot in '68 in Chicago. We're now seeing police rioting all over the United States. The vast majority, in fact, I would say probably close to 100% of the violence inflicted on persons across the United States over the past 8 days has been done by police officers. And so David Sirota has some suggestions, and Bernie Sanders has some suggestions. Actually, let me go through Bernie's suggestions first. Bernie has just proposed legislation, and he wrote about this in a letter to Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer. He said, we need to, and these are the bullet points in his letter. Number one, we need to amend federal civil rights laws to allow for more effective prosecution of police misconduct. Right now, the standard for prosecuting a police officer is willfulness. We need to change that to recklessness. Number two, we need to abolish qualified immunity. I wrote an op-ed about this that was published yesterday in Alternate. It went up on LA Progressive this morning. It's on other websites around the country. You can read that. Number three, prohibit the transfer of offensive military equipment to police departments. In other words, end Reagan's 1033 program. By the way, Obama had ended that program, and Trump reinstated it. Number four, we need to strip federal funds from any police department that violates civil rights. Number five, we need to pay wages that will attract top-tier officers and, kind of in line with what Congressman Pocan was saying just a minute ago, have national standards. I think we should have national licensing, and I think the caller who suggested that police officers should carry their own liability insurance is a really good idea, because then you've got an outside third party, the insurance companies. This is what doctors do. I mean, why is it that doctors have to pass a standardized exam? Doctors have, there's basically two categories of people who literally have your life in their hands, who have the power to kill you, intentionally or accidentally. Police and doctors. And I suppose you could toss nurses into that category, but, it fits. Doctors have to have liability insurance. It's called malpractice insurance. Why don't cops? Well, because of qualified immunity by and large, but let's do away with that and have them insure themselves. And then the insurance companies will say, you've beaten up 3 people. There's no way we're going to give you insurance. They don't have insurance. They can't work anymore. Anywhere in the country as a police officer. It's not in Bernie's list, but I think it should be added. He says, provide funding to states and municipalities to create civilian corps of unarmed first responders to supplement law enforcement. This would be social workers, EMTs, trained mental health professionals. This is to deal with low-level conflicts. Require agencies to make records of police misconduct publicly available. Require all jurisdictions to establish independent police conduct review boards, civilian boards, and give them the authority to report to federal authorities types of abuse, and enhance federal funding for these investigations. And David Sirota's list, I'll get to that after the break, but David Sirota's list continues with a number of other things along those same lines, which I think is just great. By the way, after James Miller, the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, resigned yesterday as a result of Mark Esper, the Defense Secretary's participating with Trump in the stunt. Esper came out this morning. Hang on, we'll talk about that.
The Thom Hartmann Program.
After the break as well. Stick around, we'll be right back. And welcome back. John in Seattle. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, Tom. I was listening to your show. I was curious about the federal judges, the 200 federal judges that were nominated by Mitch McConnell. And,
nominated by the Federalist Society, essentially.
The Federalist,
pushed through by McConnell, yeah.
Now, were they ever vetted? And if
they were vetted by the Federalist Society, and then the agency that has to approve of them is the United States Senate.
And which never happened, right?
No, the Senate. The Senate votes. That's their approval. There are hearings. Each one, has a very, very brief hearing, and and then the Senate votes on them. The American Bar Association used to vet them back in the day, but with the Republican administrations of George Bush and Donald Trump, instead of having the American Bar Association vet judge nominees, they're having the Federalist Society, this right-wing group that was put together by a bunch of right-wing billionaires, vet them.
So once they're in, they're in. There's no, like, if the Democrats were to take over in the Senate, could they be checked out or
No. No, they have to be impeached one by one.
They're in, right?
That's correct.
Okay. One other thing I had is if they wanted to de-escalate the police power, it might be good to mix a black policeman with a white policeman and have the two ride together and not just two white policemen at a time, which would mean equal hiring, with the black communities.
Yeah, that's the kind of policy that would have to be done at the local level, but that's a very good idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for that, John. Good talking to you. Mike in Lomita, California. Hey, Mike, what's up?
Yeah, I just called out to contradict you. You attributed the more than 100,000 COVID-19 deaths to Trump, but by this morning's Trump death clock at 8:15 Pacific time, it was only 64,657 attributable to Trump. And I worked out the number of Americans killed by Hitler, and Trump's up to 23% of Hitler's total by that standard.
Wow. Yeah, the death clock and I use different metrics. The death clock is basically assuming that he could have done something in February. I'm assuming that he could have done something in January.
Yeah, well, the death clock people say they're deliberately conservative on that. But in any event, you notice how he's still trying to do what he can to spread COVID-19 with insisting that the Republican convention go ahead as normally and trying to get the states to open up and trying to get people not to wear masks and all this. I mean, it's really...
I have no problem with all these Republicans getting together and, high-fiving each other and if they want to do that, good luck.
Yeah, well, it may be.
I shouldn't be so glib, because these Republicans have family members who are innocent, who will end up innocent victims, and they live in communities that will end up innocent victims. So, let me take that back. That was just a little too.
Also, of course, they spread it to innocent third parties.
Yeah, that was my point. Mike, thanks for the call. It is coming up on 20 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be back with more of your calls and the news of the day in just a moment. Stick around. Our 1 hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3 hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. So Mark Esper, the Secretary of Defense, had said on a phone call with governors on Monday, that parts of which got leaked to the press, that we need to dominate the battle space. This morning he went on, he was just trashed for that roundly by a lot of former generals, among other things. Also for his participation with Donald Trump in the photo op. Trump is now squealing on Twitter that they're saying we tear gas people. There was no tear gas. Well, yeah, there is something called tear gas, and then there's CS gas and CN gas, which are nerve gases. I've been gassed with tear gas and CS gas. And then there's CU gas, I think it is, and which is what was used in the park, which is another kind of gas that causes your eyes to tear up and causes all kinds of pain. It comes out green, that particular gas. And you could argue that technically that's not tear gas, but the fact of the matter is that the Centers for Disease Control actually defines tear gas as any gas that causes tears, that causes your mucous membranes to burn and causes your eyes to water. So, Trump's CDC contradicts him. But there was some question as to whether it was the National Guard who did this, and, which is arguably in Esper's chain of command. And Esper came on TV this morning and said, no, it wasn't the National Guard. He didn't come right out and say it was the park police, but apparently that's who it was. And Bill Barr, apparently our Attorney General, ordered it. And, former Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, James Miller, resigned Tuesday. In his resignation, he wrote to Mark Esper, he said, you may not have been able to stop President Trump from directing this appalling use of force, but you could have chosen to oppose it. Instead, you visibly supported it. And so Esper tried to clean this up this morning. He said in his press conference this morning, he said, I did not know we were going to the church. I was not aware that a photo op was happening. I was not aware of law enforcement's plans for the park. When he was asked by a reporter if he would criticize that use of force, he said no, he wouldn't criticize that use of force. He said they took whatever actions they felt were necessary. The National Guard, he said, was there to support the law enforcement. He's walking a fine line between basically throwing Trump under the bus, because this thing has gone down really, really bad. I mean, everybody in the country gets how ugly this is, on the one hand, and on the other hand, keeping his job. I mean, he's trying to do an Anthony Fauci or a Deborah Birx. He's trying to say, not me, but at the same time, he's trying to say, but, Donald Trump is a nice guy and he's a wonderful man, and, we all love him and respect him, and, we're going to salute that flag. I'm not buying it, and frankly, I don't think you should either. To wrap up the other, we've been talking about, by the way, Elizabeth Warren was in the crowd at the White House. This is so cool. There's photos of it all over the internet. This was from either Monday or Tuesday. And Elizabeth Warren, her husband, and her dog, and their dog, were David Corn, in fact, tweeted it. And Elizabeth Warren didn't need anybody to shoot off tear gas to clear the way for her. People were very respectful. They were very nice. Just extraordinary stuff. But anyhow, David Sirota's list of things that we can do to reform our police. Number one, reauthorize the Patriot Act in a way that, well, actually, don't reauthorize the Patriot Act. Excuse me. He notes Republicans are trying to reauthorize it in a way that would strengthen Trump's warrantless surveillance power. The Congressional Progressive Caucus, as you just heard from Congressman Pocan, has temporarily blocked that, although Nancy Pelosi actually is actively trying to revive the legislation. Number two, don't pass a Pentagon spending bill that would fund Trump's military invasion of American cities. In fact, perhaps even specifically prohibit that. Call Trump's bluff. He said he was going to defund police departments that didn't crack down on protesters, that didn't start, presumably shooting and beating people and calling out dogs on them. Cool. Defund them. Do it. Hold televised hearings spotlighting police abuses. Issue subpoenas to fully investigate the situation in various cities. Number four, stop giving military-grade weapons to local police departments. We talked about this before the break. Number five, fire the bad police chiefs and de-escalate. I would add to that, we need to change the structure, nature, and power of police unions. Number six, prosecute the bad cops. 22 state attorneys general are Democrats. You guys have power. Do something with it. Number seven, restrict the National Guard. Number eight, pass legislation restricting police and ending immunity. And I would add to that, require police officers to have their own liability insurance. People in the media have liability insurance. It's called errors and omissions insurance. Most businesses have liability insurance. It's typically also called E&O insurance, errors and omissions insurance. Doctors have, and nurses and physicians assistant right across the board, people in medicine, they have, malpractice insurance. Why don't cops? Why aren't police officers required to carry this kind of insurance? They don't have to pay for it themselves. Their agency can pay for it, just like, if you're a doctor in a hospital, typically the hospital pays for your malpractice insurance. But if you're uninsurable, you can't work. And now you've got a separate private, this libertarians, Republicans should love this. This is using the free market, right, to do something about this. Number nine, 15 states now, just in the last 5 years, have passed laws, anti-protester laws. Nearly a third of all states have implemented new regulations to regulate protest activity. A lot of this out of the Dakota Access Pipeline stuff. Repeal these laws. Protesting is in the First Amendment. It is a constitutionally protected right. And number 10, politicians need to stop taking money from police associations. New York, in the state of New York, the Senate Deputy Majority Leader Mike Gianaris says he's no longer going to take money from police agencies, police unions, police groups. Great idea. We'll be back with your calls after the break.
To the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's the place where smart people get their news. The Thom Hartmann Program. Stick around. We'll be right back. Well, it's Wednesday, and we are rolling along, and we need your help. And great news today. Andrew in San Diego has put up $10,000 as a match. So if you give $10 today, Free Speech TV gets 20. If you give $100 today, Free Speech gets 200. If you give $1,000 today, Free Speech gets 2,000. If you give $5,000 today, Free Speech TV gets 10,000. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help Free Speech TV out. This is a real tough time for organizations like Free Speech TV that are supported by their viewers. The kind of programming that we do, where we, say it as it is not the sort of thing that, big corporations are eager to throw money at. And beyond that, Free Speech TV is a nonprofit, and, they're just set up to say, no, we want to be of, by, and for our viewers. And that's what Free Speech TV is, and that's how you can help us. You can help Free Speech TV right now by calling 877-378-8669. It's a tough time for everybody. I know, we're in a political season, so there's enormous competition for campaign cash. I'm now literally every day getting a fundraising email from the Biden campaign and pretty much every day from the Trump campaign. Occasionally I read them to you on the air. They're somewhere between obscene and absurd. But the point is that at the same time that half the country is unemployed, there's a lot of need, a lot of great organizations that are doing great stuff, from food banks to media. And then we've got, on top of that, the politicians asking for money. So it's a real tough time for Free Speech TV, frankly. And we've got to pay the bills. We've got to cover the cost of all these electrons, happily making their way up through the sky to you. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV so that we can keep this program on the air on this network. Free Speech TV is the premier progressive network in the country, anyway. I don't know about the world, I was about to say, but Free Speech TV is now available to the world. They're on freespeech.org, where you can actually watch the program. In fact, we get calls, and just in the last week, we had calls from Israel, we had a call from Mexico, we had a call from Ireland. There's another country or two in there. So we're having some significant reach, and we're having, I think, a considerable impact. And it's because of you. If you have supported Free Speech TV up to this point, whether it's financial, or if you can't afford to give financial support, whether it's simply, sharing the word with your friends and getting 2 or 3 new people to watch Free Speech TV, and I know that's happening. I'm hearing from callers all the time. Hey, I just discovered your program. Somebody told me about it. That's how that impact is spreading. So everything you give today will be doubled with Andrew's $10,000 match. With a $20 gift, you have your choice between the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or the I'm Voting Are You car magnet. With a $50 gift, you have your choice between the Just Effing Vote tote bag and the Free Speech TV webcam cover. With a $75 gift, uniquely, you can get the Thom Hartmann Program mug with my face on it. With a $100 gift, there's the Free Speech TV face masks. With a $125 gift, or $120 gift, excuse me, you have your choice of 4 options. The social distancing kit, which is the 2 Free Speech TV face masks and the Free Speech TV branded hand sanitizer. The Just Effing Vote t-shirt. The Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt. Or my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, which exposes how the Republicans have figured out that they can't win elections except by cheating. And I just go through chapter and verse about how they cheat and the long history of that in the United States. With a $240 gift, you can join us on Free Speech TV, or join us, on a Zoom call, and or join me on a Zoom call with a small number of other people, and we'll talk about the things we can't talk about on the air, or that we do, as the case may be. With a $360 gift, there's the Free Speech TV face mask, the Hidden History of the War on Voting, Just Effing Vote tote bag, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, Just Effing Vote t-shirt, and with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and we'll see you here. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Please call now. It's so important during a really critical time like this. Our democracy is teetering on a knife's edge. It's so important that we have media, progressive media, that's telling the truth about what's going on in America. And not just telling the truth, acting in some cases as a nexus for information. Amy Goodman's program, my program, Randy Rhodes, David Sonali. I mean, there is such great programming on this network with such important information that is so critical, frankly, to the preservation, the survival of democracy in this country. I've been concerned about the rise of fascism on this program for 16 years, but now it seems like it's right in our face. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help us keep this extraordinary television network on the air. Coming up on this week's Science Revolution, how do we stop authoritarians like Trump and Bolsonaro from killing more people in this pandemic? Trump and Bolsonaro, the presidents of the United States and Brazil, are essentially refusing to do anything consequential about an epidemic that is killing massive numbers of their own country's citizens. Bill Freese drops by. He's the science policy analyst with the Center for Food Safety on the newly finalized federal regulations on GMOs. And Beyond Nuclear's Paul Gunter also drops by on how America is unprepared for a nuclear accident during this pandemic. Find the Science Revolution wherever you get great podcasts. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Karen in Abiquilu, New Mexico. I'm sure I'm mangling. Thank you. What's up? Okay, Abiquiu. What's up?
All right. First time, long time. I have a question about the Insurrection Act and Posse Comitatus. Trump did threaten the use of the Insurrection Act, and I wondered if you would speak briefly to compare and contrast the Insurrection Act with Posse Comitatus.
Sure. Posse Comitatus specifically says that the military may not turn their guns on American people. I'm pretty sure it was passed in the 1870s after the Civil War. Basically to say, never again will we have the Army pointing guns at people. On the other hand, back in 1807, after there was some uprising back around that time, I forget which one it was, the Insurrection Act was passed, and that actually empowers governors to request of the federal government the assistance of the military to put down an insurrection within their state. And this was happening during the Jefferson administration as the southern states were starting to break away from the idea of ending slavery in 1808, and which is what was written into the Constitution. It didn't actually say it would end slavery, it would just end the importation of enslaved persons. But at the time of the writing of the Constitution in 1787, there was a widespread belief that within a couple of generations, slavery would fade out, would die out. And so there was concern that you would see some insurrections around this issue, particularly coming out of the South. In 1807, they passed the Insurrection Act. That, my understanding of the Insurrection Act is, and I'm not an authority on it, is that it requires a governor to request the military presence. Whether Trump can invoke it all by himself without a governor, participating. He might be able to do that in the District of Columbia, which has no governor, but I don't think he can do that anywhere else. And frankly, I don't think he needs to invoke that act to militarize the District of Columbia, because it's a federal district. He has ultimate authority over that. So, did I answer your question?
I think you did. Thank you so very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you very much for the call. Deborah in Columbia, Tennessee. Hey, Deborah, what's up?
Yes, you were speaking to someone earlier about the judges, and once they're in for good. I heard something a while back about the possibility of legislation being passed where these judges, maybe they wouldn't hold the seat that they were brought into, that even the Supreme Court, they might be able to take these lifelong judges and move them to places that they don't have quite the same power. And I was just curious if you had heard or knew anything about this.
With regard to the Supreme Court, that is not only possible, it's in the Constitution. It's Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution, which gives Congress the power to regulate the Supreme Court. And in fact, Congress regulates the entire federal court system. But and Elizabeth Warren has proposed term limiting Supreme Court justices, and because Article 3 provides for lifetime appointment of federal judges. You couldn't basically fire a federal judge or retire them, but what you could do is you could move a Supreme Court justice down to an appeals court or district court level. But that's the bottom, the bottom of the federal judge ring. The problem with doing that sort of thing, to the best of my knowledge, Deborah, is it's a question that I've never specifically researched, but I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. The problem with trying to do that with the judges that Mitch McConnell is putting in is that the vast majority of them are going in as these judges at the bottom rung. So there's no place lower to demote them to. And because the Constitution gives them a lifetime appointment, to the best of my knowledge, the only thing that you could do is impeach them. And you'd have to do that one by one, individually, and you'd have to go through the process of articles of impeachment coming out of the House of Representatives, going to the Senate, and the judges being impeached. And that's only happened, I think, 3 times in the history of the United States. So it's pretty unlikely.
So we're screwed.
Yeah, I think so. For another generation or two. This is this is McConnell and the Koch brothers and their billionaire buddies who funded the Federalist Society. This is their sweet goodbye kiss to America as we prepare to vote the Republicans out of office. Yep. Deborah, thank you for the call. Marty in Evergreen Park, Illinois. Hey, Marty, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom. Hey, I just wanted to share an idea with you and get your thoughts on it. I was thinking, since we're amassing a group of labor workers, right, to go and do the census, right, to go to the different houses and tally the census, I was thinking we can train those folks as well to maybe conduct COVID testing or coronavirus testing, since they're going to be going door to door and stuff. And I thought it'd be a good use of our labor force, to get to that testing numbers that we need to get to.
It's an interesting idea. I've heard people suggest that postal workers could do the same thing because they go door to door. The problem is that testing somebody for coronavirus is a medical procedure. When you stick that swab up somebody's nose, about half the time they will sneeze fairly violently. And if they have the coronavirus, they will blow it all over you. And so you really want medical professionals or people who have been trained, at least in that very narrow piece of medicine, to be doing that. And also the census workers, and I haven't heard any updates on what's going on with the census in quite a while. I don't know if the census workers are out there or not. I think it's been suspended, but I could be wrong. Not the entire census, but I mean, for a couple of months, Louise and I got ours in the mail, and we just filled it out and mailed it back. But I think that they're really, really busy, as are postal workers. I think it's going to take a completely separate agency or group of people, and also I think it would be very difficult to federalize that. I think it has to be done by the states. I suppose it's conceivable it could be federalized. I don't know. I'd have to look into the legality of that. But keep thinking, Marty. There's some a lot of great ideas here. Roger in Desert Hot Springs, California. Hey, Roger, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom. How you doing?
Good. What's up?
Good. I'm a little bit younger than you are. Back in the 70s, I was taking a lot of classes in administration of justice and police science. And I was in a lecture, and one of the class members asked a question of the instructor, and the question was, what personality type will be successful as a police officer? And the teacher looked back and thought about it and said, my goodness, it's the bully on the playground. I don't think we really need to have improved training and so on like that. We need to change the type of people we hire.
Yeah, I'm guessing that instructor himself was probably the bully on the playground, and so was reflecting on his own experience. And those are the people that we specifically need to exclude from policing. And,
exactly.
We need more. I hate to say Andy of Mayberry's. It's a phrase that's probably lost on anybody under 50 anyway. But there are good models for policing. And just look at the cop shows prior to the Reagan Revolution. Macmillan and Wife and Columbo and even some of the private detective shows where they were interacting with the police. Rockford Files and stuff like that. And the old original Hawaii Five-0 with Jack Lord. The new Hawaii Five-0, the guys literally are shooting people in the kneecaps and beating them up in the basement of the Hawaiian Police Department, illegally, unconstitutionally extracting confessions and things. But in the original Hawaii Five-0, they were respectful, they were decent. They didn't shoot people, they carried guns, but they didn't constantly draw them. They weren't hyper-militarized. America has changed dramatically, and I really got this when Louise and I both had surgery back 6, 7, 8 years ago, and when we were living in D.C., and we were both laid up at the same time for a couple of weeks, and we were binge watching old shows from when we were kids, and we rewatched all those episodes of Columbo and Macmillan and Wife, and it made me so sad because the policing back then was relatively decent. I get it that, even back then, black people were being killed by police, black people were being brutalized by police all over the country. But at least there was this model of policing that was being put forward in the media. And I think in a very real way, the media acts as an instructor to police officers. They are consumers of media just like all the rest of us, to tell them how police should behave. And we've seen that just completely go off the rails since the Reagan Revolution with the hyper-militarization of the police. And we need to pull back from that. We need to go back to policing as something other than just basically prison guard-ism. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
45 minutes past the hour here in the place where despair is not an option. The Thom Hartmann Program. Back to your calls. And welcome back, Ron in Seattle. Hey, Ron, thanks for listening to KBCS. What's up?
Well, Tom, I really hope that Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren can lead this country away from the direction it's going now. But let's just say for a minute that Trump and his fascist friends are already on the road to disrupting the election. What can we do to stop that?
Raise hell. And I don't mean riot. I mean, point it out at every turn. We need to be pushing back strongly, and the media is just starting to do this now against the Republican efforts to prevent mail-in voting. The timelines, the deadlines are coming up for any kind of changes in state laws or any kind of federal law that might allow for national mail-in voting. I got an email this morning from FreedomWorks, the group that the Koch brothers basically kicked off, and their little their network that created the Tea Party back in 2009. And today the email was about how Nancy Pelosi is trying to create a national voter fraud scheme by offering everybody in the country mail-in voting. Fact of the matter is 24% of all the votes cast in the last election, a couple of years ago, were mail-in votes. And you've got 5 states where it's exclusively mail-in voting. Here in Oregon, where I live, we've been doing it for 22 years, and there's never been an allegation of fraud anywhere. It's one of the most secure forms of voting, one of the most stable forms of voting, and it just has to be done right. I mean, some states require you to have a notary signature, or you have to have a letter from the doctor, or you have to have a witness, and all that stuff needs to be done away with. It's just very straightforward stuff. But that's frankly, I think, Ron, that's what we need to be doing is, we need to be promoting this. Thanks a lot for the call. Vince in San Jose. Hey, Vince, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Long time no speak. I just wanted to call in. One of your callers recently just mentioned that something about the census, and you said you weren't even sure what was going on with it. I actually, back in March, applied for a job with the census to be a census taker, and they did offer me a job. Within about 2 or 3 days, I got a phone call and an email saying that they were postponing everything because of the COVID-19 situation. But about a week ago, I got another email and a couple of return calls that are letting me know that they are actually re-kicking this thing back out. They're going to be restarting it.
Good.
I go in this weekend for my my fingerprinting and my background check. But the training isn't going to start until August, so I think they're really going to wait it out even longer. And that's the training. I won't even be going out doing anything until probably late August, early September.
Well, that's interesting.
But that's going to be starting here in California.
Vince.
It's going to be going back to work.
Yeah. Was this a federal agency or state agency that contacted you?
I believe it was state. I'm not entirely certain.
Because the Census Bureau is a federal agency, but I don't know if they run the whole show or if they contract basically with the states and the states do it.
Quite honestly, I haven't gotten that far into the nuts and bolts.
Who's going to fingerprint you? Where are you going? I mean, is it a state agency or?
No, I'm going to an Office Depot to do my fingerprinting and background training, or background thing.
So
they're going to get all the information
privatize
on
part
Office
of it.
Depot.
Fascinating.
Yeah, part of it is.
Vince, thanks for that. Thank you for educating me. It is such a privilege to be here with some of the smartest people on earth and the most well-informed, and I learned so much from all of my listeners. Vince, thank you again. I really appreciate it. We'll be right back. It's 10 minutes, or will be shortly, 10 minutes before the hour. Stick around. Hey, Thom Hartmann here. I have a new book out. It's called The Hidden History of Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream, and Ralph Nader wrote the foreword. It's available for pre-order wherever you find fine books. In our latest video for folks who support our show over at thomhartmann.com, it's pretty mind-boggling, actually. The candidate Trump back in 2016 said, I'm not going to cut Social Security like every other Republican, and I'm not going to cut Medicare or Medicaid. Every other Republican is going to cut, but I won't. That's what he said. Well, what did his budget actually propose? His budget actually proposed, this is last year's budget. Congress didn't pass it, thank God, but this is what his budget proposed. $1.9 trillion in cuts to Medicare and Medicaid, and $26 billion in cuts to Social Security. And now he is block granting Medicaid to the states, which is already cutting back on Medicaid programs in the red states. You can check it all out over at thomhartmann.com. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Charles in Miami. Hey, Charles, what's on your mind today?
Hey, how you doing, Tom? I'm just looking at these different things that we should be trying to propose right now, or at least if Trump is serious, that the Republicans should be trying to propose. I think one of the things, though, that instead of leaving the city on the hook, especially if there's like an incident like this where there's a riot, I think that the next time these cities try to negotiate with these unions, they should have a caveat that says that this police officer or any officers involved should have their pension as part of the payment, or they should also go into their savings. I think that would be an incentive for them to stop, being so aggressive with people. And last but not least, I do have a question for you.
Well, let me just respond to this first, Charles, and then you can ask your question. If we were to do away with this qualified immunity doctrine as it applies to police that the Supreme Court put into place in 1982, then it would be possible for individual citizens to sue not just the police department and the city when they're abused by the police, but the individual police officers. And that I see as a good step. And then police officers would carry liability insurance, just like I do. I literally, as a talk show host, I have to have liability insurance. In case I say something that, causes somebody to, get killed or something or whatever, cops should have that too. To your question then, Charles.
Okay, and I've noticed that there's a lot of silence right now on the right. And my thing is this.
Yeah.
They, when President Obama was there, they did everything in their power to demonize him, to stop legislation and whatever. Right now, as far as I'm concerned, Joe Biden and the Democrats have a mandate, and they should express it. Basically, we need health care. We need, reformation of the police, and everything else that you could put on the agenda. But my thing is this. There's no room for trying to be friends with these Republicans or having them tell us that we're wrong at every turn or at every corner, or it's going to cost too much, or it's going to mess whatever up. They have destroyed this country. And all I'm trying to say is, at least now the Democrats should have a backbone. They should not take no for an answer for any legislation that we put up in the first 100 days or throughout Biden's administration, because they've destroyed.
Yeah, Charles, I get it, and I think that's happening. And although there's that practical limit of the Senate, and but the bully pulpit is a big deal. Ray in Dixon County, Tennessee. Hey, Ray, it says you disagree with me about what?
Yeah, Tom, I disagree about the all mail-in balloting. I think looking at the issue of where Russia tried to interfere in the election, China tries to interfere in our elections, the mechanism that hands Russia and China the most opportunity to interfere and fraudulently change an election would be all mail-in balloting. And let me give you an example.
Let me get this straight, Ray. If you got electronic voting machines that the Russians can hack and electronic tabulators that they did hack in Florida, we know in the last presidential election, I get that. I don't get, and I know some idiot on Fox News said, oh yeah, the Russians will just print a whole bunch of ballots and mail them in as if they came from real voters. That was obviously said by somebody who has never done mail-in voting. I get a ballot from the state of Oregon. It's got my name on the envelope. When I mail it back, my name is on the outside of the envelope so that they know who I am and where it came from, and I have to sign that envelope, and they compare my signature with the signature on file. Now, how are Russia and China going to fake that?
Okay, they don't have to. If you understand what happens in ballot harvesting, if they could put operatives into the ballot harvesting process, and if you harvest one ballot harvester,
what the hell are you talking about, Ray?
One ballot harvester can harvest 100 or more ballots, and they help. They go out to find people who aren't going to vote.
You're talking about the Republican guy in North Carolina who went around and paid people $5 for their ballots, and yeah, I mean that happens. It happens very rarely, and that guy's in jail.
Hold on. You don't understand. You don't understand. If a ballot harvester helps people process their ballots, fill out their ballots, he lets them fill out the ballot. If he doesn't like the way they ballot, he can trash those ballots, and they never.
That's a federal crime, Ray.
It's a federal
crime. You go to prison for that.
But no
people.
One would
this is
know.
just like the in-person voting fraud BS that we get from the Republican Party. They want to suppress the vote. The principal instrument of voter suppression that the Republicans use is reducing the number of polling places and reducing the number of voting machines so that people in minority areas, older people, and college students have to stand in line for 6, 8, 10 hours, particularly people who are paid by the hour. With mail-in voting, that never happens. 22 years we have been voting exclusively by mail here in Oregon, and in 5 other states it's done. There has never been a single, to the best of my knowledge, a single allegation of anything like what you're talking about. This is a fantasy that is made up by these hysterics over at Fox News and these Republicans who want to continue to suppress the vote by making it hard for young people, old people, and minorities to vote because those people tend to vote Democratic. It's just that simple, Ray. It's just that simple. You really should try mail-in voting. It's great. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
Wartime profiteering has been as common in our country.
We say fight back!
we have a new video up for people who are supporters of the Thom Hartmann Program. Specifically, it's over at thomhartmann.com, talking about language, how we use language. Language matters tremendously. And we have chosen as a society, as a culture, as media, as political leadership, etc., not to refer to people like Steve Mnuchin, who threw thousands of people out of their homes illegally during the banking crisis, as looters, not to refer to Rex Tillerson, whose oil company has ravaged much of the third world, literally destroying people's lives, killing people, poisoning people. We don't refer to them as looters. We don't refer to the police who go into neighborhoods and kill people, minorities, particularly African Americans. We don't refer to them as looters, stealing their lives. But when black people rise up and say, no, enough, we call them looters. There's something wrong with this. Check it out. It's at thomhartmann.com. Well, it's Wednesday, and we are rolling along, and we need your help. And great news today. Andrew in San Diego has put up $10,000 as a match. So if you give $10 today, Free Speech TV gets 20. If you give $100 today, Free Speech gets 200. If you give $1,000 today, Free Speech gets 2,000. If you give $5,000 today, Free Speech TV gets 10,000. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help Free Speech TV out. This is a real tough time for organizations like Free Speech TV that are supported by their viewers. The kind of programming that we do, where we, say it as it is not the sort of thing that, big corporations are eager to throw money at. And beyond that, Free Speech TV is a nonprofit, and, they're just set up to say, no, we want to be of, by, and for our viewers. And that's what Free Speech TV is. And that's how you can help us. You can help Free Speech TV right now by calling 877-378-8669. It's a tough time for everybody. I know, we're in a political season, so there's enormous competition for campaign cash. I'm now literally every day getting a fundraising email from the Biden campaign, and pretty much every day from the Trump campaign. Occasionally I read them to you on the air. They're somewhere between obscene and absurd. But the point is that at the same time that half the country is unemployed, there's a lot of need, a lot of great organizations that are doing great stuff, from food banks to media. And then we've got, on top of that, the politicians asking for money. So it's a real tough time for Free Speech TV, frankly. And we've got to pay the bills. We've got to cover the cost of all these electrons, happily making their way up through the sky to you. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV so that we can keep this program on the air on this network. Free Speech TV is the premier progressive network in the country, anyway. I don't know about the world, I was about to say, but Free Speech TV is now available to the world. They're on freespeech.org, where you can actually watch the program. In fact, we get calls, and just in the last week, we had calls from Israel, we had a call from Mexico, we had a call from Ireland. There's another country or two in there. So we're having some significant reach, and we're having, I think, a considerable impact. And it's because of you. If you have supported Free Speech TV up to this point, whether it's financial, or if you can't afford to give financial support, whether it's simply, sharing the word with your friends and getting 2 or 3 new people to watch Free Speech TV, and I know that's happening. I'm hearing from callers all the time. Hey, I just discovered your program. Somebody told me about it. That's how that impact is spreading. So everything you give today will be doubled with Andrew's $10,000 match. With a $20 gift, you have your choice between the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or the I'm Voting Are You car magnet. With a $50 gift, you have your choice between the Just Effing Vote tote bag and the Free Speech TV webcam cover. With a $75 gift, uniquely, you can get the Thom Hartmann Program mug with my face on it. With a $100 gift, there's the Free Speech TV face masks. With a $125 gift, or $120 gift, you have your choice of 4 options. The social distancing kit, which is the 2 Free Speech TV face masks and the Free Speech TV branded hand sanitizer. The Just Effing Vote t-shirt. The Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt. Or my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, which exposes how the Republicans have figured out that they can't win elections except by cheating. And I just go through chapter and verse about how they cheat and the long history of that in the United States. The $240 gift, you can join us on Free Speech TV, or join us, in a Zoom call, and or join me on a Zoom call with small number of other people, and we'll talk about the things we can't talk about on the air, or that we do, as the case may be. With a $360 gift, there's the Free Speech TV face mask, the Hidden History of the War on Voting, Just Effing Vote tote bag, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, Just Effing Vote t-shirt, and with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and we'll see you here. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Please call now. It's so important during a really critical time like this. Our democracy is teetering on a knife's edge. It's so important that we have media, progressive media, that's telling the truth about what's going on in America. And not just telling the truth, acting in some cases as a nexus for information. You know, Amy Goodman's program, my program, Randy Rhodes, David Pack, Sonali. I mean, there is such great programming on this network with such important information that is so critical, frankly, to the preservation, the survival of democracy in this country. You know, I've been concerned about the rise of fascism on this program for 16 years, but now it seems like it's right in our face. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help us keep this extraordinary television network on the air.
By Monica L. Smith.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
While America is experiencing multiple crises, the Trump administration is rolling forward with a whole bunch of bizarre dimensions to their various agendas. This most recent one is really distressing. They are rescinding an order that protected bears and wolves on protected lands, so that now Don Jr. and Eric, the big game hunters who are so proud of having their pictures taken with dead elephants and whatnot, they can go up to Alaska and literally go into bears' dens and kill the baby bears and lure them with donuts and things. Jim Adams, the Alaska Regional Director for the National Parks Conservation Association, the NPCA.org, is on the line with us. His Twitter handle is AdamsJAK. Jim, welcome to the program, and tell me what the Trump administration is doing here.
Howdy, Tom. Good morning. Well, the Trump administration is rolling back a rule that was passed in 2015, and that rule in 2015 said that hey, you can't kill black bear cubs and mothers in dens on national preserve land in Alaska. We have about 20 million acres of that if you're a sport hunter. And we also said you can't shoot wolf cubs in dens on national preserve land in Alaska if you're a sport hunter. And you can't bait brown bears. Put out bacon or donuts or something else so that the bears get habituated to food and come by predictably so you can shoot them. Again, if you're a sport hunter. The Park Service was kind of forced into passing that rule in 2015 because the state of Alaska has engaged in an increasingly aggressive campaign over the last 20 years to reduce bear and wolf populations so that caribou and moose populations increase for sport hunters here in the state. They essentially want to turn the state as best they can into a game farm for caribou and moose hunters. And as that went on, the state began to pass more and more kind of aggressive regulations that applied to national preserve land, the land that's set aside for protection for all Americans. Some of the, frankly, wildest and most incredible country in the world, and certainly in the United States, is up here in these preserves. But the state started saying, well, okay, you can kill bears 365 days a year instead of 90 days a year. And you can kill 2 bears a year instead of 1 every 4 years. So during that time, the Park Service kept objecting to these increased takes and increased bag limits and increased hunting seasons, saying, wait a minute, this isn't what the preserves are for. They're for all Americans. They're not just game farms. Until finally, the Board of Game went beyond just changing seasons and bag limits and said, okay, no, now you can kill cubs and now you can kill wolf pups on these lands. And at that point, the Park Service, frankly, was backed into a corner and passed a rule saying, no, you can't do that. Our national preserves are actually for all Americans. They're not intended to just be feeding farms for caribou and moose. And now the Trump administration, over the course of 3 years, has been working to reverse that. And a couple of weeks ago, they announced they were going to.
Wow. So I was right that, Don Jr. and Eric Trump, might be up in Alaska next looking for things to kill. This is pretty pathetic. Is there any way to stop this? I mean, or is this entirely within the province of the Trump administration? There's no legislative remedy, or I mean, what do we do with this?
Well, it's a good question. I think in the short term, the Trump administration, interestingly enough, they announced that they were going to release the rule, 10 days ago, but they haven't done it yet. So we're still waiting for it to drop with a large thud on our foot, probably at 4:30 p.m. on a Friday, because they like to drop things then so no one notices.
Right.
But once that comes out, certainly litigation will be an option. It's not appropriate for an agency to essentially turn around and reverse a decision it made 3 years ago after a lot of consideration and hard work. So there'll probably be a legal angle for a bunch of people, but I think also we should be talking to our congressional representatives. If I don't think that in the current Congress this rule could be reversed, but if it's always possible that a new Senate and House and potentially new president would consider reversing this rule.
On a larger scale, Louise and I used to own a couple hundred acres in Vermont, and there, at that time, I don't think there were any wolves in Vermont. Are there any efforts to bring back apex predators across the rest of the United States, or is this kind of battle going on state by state? I know that the ranchers and farmers have always been hostile to wolves and presumably bears as well.
It's, in Alaska specifically, the effort is more to keep people from killing them unreasonably than it is to kind of bring them back. We have Alaska and the United States should be really proud of the bear and wolf populations that we have across the state and on our public lands, and particularly on the parks and national preserves. But, what we don't want to do is have the state go after them and reduce them. But more broadly, nationally, as you know, there are efforts to bring back wolves and bears and other predators to portions of the country like the Cascades and Washington. And those efforts are really important for the ecosystems. What we've seen in Yellowstone and other places where we actually brought wolves and other apex predators back is it really makes a difference. It changes everything that's going on. Streams get healthier. Places aren't overbrowsed. Different kinds of native birds come back. It's, apex predators make a huge difference in ecosystems and, frankly, in our experience of the world.
Yeah, they fit into the great web of life, as it were. Fascinating stuff. So, Jim, tell me about your organization, the National Parks Conservation Association. You're the Alaska Regional Director. We're talking to Jim Adams.
Yeah, so celebrated our 101st anniversary. We were actually created by the founder of the Park Service because he realized after just a very short time working in government that the Park Service and the national parks were going to need an outside advocate. And that is our role. So we work to protect the parks and the preserves that people use, the national historical parks that people go to learn about the nation's history and the surrounding ecosystem, so that when people do visit those places, they have the kind of incredible experience we all expect when we visit these really incredible places.
Yeah, in the last minute we have here, Jim, I'm not that familiar with the history of our national parks. I know Teddy Roosevelt played a big role in that. Did we have national parks before Roosevelt?
Tom, that was a trick question, and I haven't been studying my history, but I will say.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Let's see. The park system was founded, I believe, in 1918, but we did have a few national parks before that. It was only that the park system itself kind of came about in the 1918. But I believe Yosemite was created sometime in the late 1800s. I'm hesitant to give you a specific date. So the Park Service itself celebrated its 100th anniversary 3 years ago, I think, or their centennial, maybe 4 years ago in 2016.
Right. Fascinating stuff. Jim, thanks so much for dropping by. Jim Adams, the Alaska Regional Director with the National Parks Conservation Association, npca.org, and you can tweet him at AdamsJAK. Jim, thanks again.
Tom, my pleasure. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Great talking with you. We'll be right back. It's 15 minutes past the hour. More of the news of the day and your calls after this.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
The place where despair is not an option. We'll be right back with your calls and more of the news of the day. And welcome back. Let's see here. James in Seattle. Hey, James, what's up?
Hi, great to hear from you. I got this understanding for myself that political parties are counterweights to each other, like on a seesaw. And the Republicans take the extreme on the other side. And anytime the Democratic Party starts to go to the left, the media says, "Oh, you're getting extremist." But they never do that to the Republicans, ever. But the only way to get leverage, the only way to get leverage is extreme. Now, this is a party position. It doesn't matter what the candidates believe or anything, but the whole purpose of being in a party is that you vote together for a party position. Mm-hmm. So the Republicans have health care costs that double the cost of not covering everybody. The only way that we can get the leverage to do that is to go for zero cost at the hospital and covering everybody, because that makes the compromise position in the center at cost covering everybody. That's the way that so Biden or anybody can be in any idea or ideology or that they really want, but it doesn't matter, because the Republicans hold to a party position where everybody has to vote to allow a vote. They may or may not vote for it for individual reasons, but if their vote is required to make the thing pass, everybody in the party has to vote for it because it's a party position.
Yeah, I'm with you, and that's why I think that, Joe Biden is talking about basically, Medicare for anybody who wants it, Pete Buttigieg's position, a public option, and probably that's where we will start. But I think eventually we're going to have to get to basically Medicare for all. James, thanks for the call. Gail in Seattle. Hey, Gail, what's on your mind today?
Hi, good morning, Tom. We all know that voter ID is a powerful tool to guarantee voter suppression in this country. So I have three connected questions for you, please. What states demand voter ID? Are there any important swing states amongst those states? And lastly, how can we get legitimate IDs to people before the general election?
The first two questions I don't know the answer to, Gail. I am guessing the League of Women Voters may have that information on their website, but I'm not real sure. A Public Citizen may also. They have a whole division that's dealing with voting issues. We've had their vice president and their CEO on this program talking about that. With regard to helping people get ID so that they can vote, there are efforts being done by organizations, typically at the state level, and Stacey Abrams' organization. I'm not sure if they're specifically helping people get IDs. It would surprise me if they weren't, but I don't know for a fact that they are. I know that they're engaged in legal challenges by and large, against efforts to suppress the vote. And she and her organization, I think it's called, I believe it's called Fair Vote. No, it's not. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of her organization right off the top of my head. But I would check that out. You could easily find it with a DuckDuckGo search on the internet as a starting point. So, Gail, thank you. I'm sorry I don't have the specific information you're asking for. But we'll get. I'm sure that we will get to that sort of thing as conversations about the election really start to pick up as we get closer to the election. It's coming up on 20 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls. Our 1-hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3-hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. It's that time of year where we celebrate Memorial Day. We memorialize the Americans who have died in our wars, in the Vietnam War, in the Iraq War, in the Afghanistan War, in the Gulf War, the earlier Iraq War, in the Korean War. If you add all of those wars together that I just named, the sum total of them is fewer than the number of people who have died in 3 months from COVID-19 virus on Donald Trump's watch. Isn't it time for us to memorialize the Americans who have died and are continuing to die at the rate of, well over 1,000 a day as a result of the incompetence of Donald Trump? It seems like maybe it's a good idea. Maybe it's the time to add COVID-19 victims. Because, after all, Trump says we're warriors, or maybe there should be a separate holiday. But something to think about. You'll find a video about it over at thomhartmann.com. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Donald Trump is, China actually tweeted out I don't know if you call it teasing or ridiculing Trump for hiding in the bunker at the White House on Friday. And so he calls into Fox News and says, we weren't hiding in the bunker. I went down there to inspect it with my wife and son. It's like, can you imagine, being trapped in the bunker with Trump? It's just, while he's cowering. And this is, and there's a fair amount of speculation, and I think it's probably all true, that when Hope Hicks and Ivanka Trump came up with the idea of Trump walking over to St. John's Church, which is across the street from the White House, it's where every president since James Madison has gone. It's where Abraham Lincoln prayed every night, I believe, or at least I'm pretty sure it was every day Lincoln went over there during the Civil War. And most presidents have gone there multiple times, on weekends and things. It's referred to as the President's Church. I think that, when he went over there to wave a Bible around, like he was like, what's this thing? I don't know, I've never opened one of these. Like Sarah Cooper has a new video out of Trump talking about the Bible. It's actually from, an interview that he did back during the election in 2016. But, what's your favorite Bible verse? Oh, I wouldn't pick any particular one. I love them all, well, what's more important, the Old or the New Testament? Oh, I think they're both important. And he clearly knew nothing about what he was talking about. He's never been to Bible study. He's probably never been to church in any, for any purpose other than a political purpose. But, this is just so pathetic. Calling into Fox News and like, no, I wasn't hiding down there. I was inspecting it. Right. It's just extraordinary. By the way, Ella Jones was just elected the first black mayor of Ferguson, Missouri. This was yesterday's election. And some good stuff. And This is funny. Hunter is writing over at Daily Kos. Donald Trump claimed he didn't live in Florida on his own voter registration form. He writes, what a dumbass. The Washington Post is now reporting that Trump originally tried to register to vote in Florida using, wait for it, an out-of-state address. He claimed his legal address was 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Well, if that's your legal address, that's where you have to vote, right? Oh, man. It just gets weirder and weirder. Patrick in Long Island, New York. Hey, Patrick, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, I'm reminded of the saying that goes somewhat of if you live long enough, you'll see history repeat itself. And I heard I heard you discussing briefly a couple days ago about Trump emulating Nixon and using Nixon's playbook, and also to tag onto that, you're watching the old shows and being nostalgic for, a much more civilized nation. And, of all the people to emulate, Trump chooses Nixon. And this is like a flashback of the 60s for me, when you had cities on fire. Yeah, you had cities on fire. And there's a sad common theme is that I recall when Nixon got the hard hats to beat up the hippies, because Nixon didn't care for the hippies at all. But the same thing is still happening to the blacks, to the African American, to the people who are perceived to be somewhat ruining this country, and they have been for the last 240 years. When is this ever going to change? When is this, not going to be a common theme that one group of individuals is the whipping boy, pardon the pun, for white people, quite frankly, who are behind their gated communities and not coming out of the shadows. It's if you want to be nostalgic, to have the worst part of the 60s come back. Only thing I could say that was good was I recall the photographic image of, I guess, a college-age girl putting a flower in a National Guardsman in his rifle, in the end of the barrel of his rifle.
I remember that. Yeah.
But, I was talking to somebody just earlier today who was about in their mid-30s, and I said to him, we got through it then, with the burning and the protests, and it used to be you go to a protest to meet a date, it was, where's the protest going to be today? And that we will get through it, and it may be ugly, but to hang in there, do your best, and stay spiritual, to stay strong.
Yeah, and we did end the war, but we didn't end racial discrimination in this country, and we didn't end police killings of African Americans, and we didn't end police brutality more generally, and all those things. We've got a big lift, Patrick, and we've got to do it. We've got to do it. And police reforms, among other reforms across our culture, have to come out of what's going on right now. It's It's coming up on 28 minutes past the hour. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, the place where smart people get their news. Stick around. We'll be right back. We'll stick around.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Back with your calls right after this. Well, it's Wednesday, and we are rolling along, and we need your help. And great news today. Andrew in San Diego has put up $10,000 as a match. So if you give $10 today, Free Speech TV gets 20. If you give $100 today, Free Speech gets 200. If you give $1,000 today, Free Speech gets 2,000. If you give $5,000 today, Free Speech TV gets 10,000. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help Free Speech TV out. This is a real tough time for organizations like Free Speech TV that are supported by their viewers. The kind of programming that we do, where we, say it as it is not the sort of thing that, big corporations are eager to throw money at. And beyond that, Free Speech TV is a nonprofit, and, they're just set up to say, no, we want to be of, by, and for our viewers. And that's what Free Speech TV is, and that's how you can help us. You can help Free Speech TV right now by calling 877-378-8669. It's a tough time for everybody. I know, we're in a political season, so there's enormous competition for campaign cash. I'm now literally every day getting a fundraising email from the Biden campaign, and pretty much every day from the Trump campaign. Occasionally I read them to you on the air. They're somewhere between obscene and absurd. But the point is that at the same time that half the country is unemployed, there's a lot of need, a lot of great organizations that are doing great stuff, from food banks to media. And then we've got, on top of that, the politicians asking for money. So it's a real tough time for Free Speech TV, frankly. And we've got to pay the bills. We've got to cover the cost of all these electrons, happily making their way up through the sky to you. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and make your contribution to Free Speech TV so that we can keep this program on the air on this network. Free Speech TV is the premier progressive network in the country, anyway. I don't know about the world, I was about to say, but Free Speech TV is now available to the world. They're on freespeech.org, where you can actually watch the program. In fact, we get calls, and just in the last week, we had calls from Israel, we had a call from Mexico, we had a call from Ireland. There's another country or two in there. So we're having some significant reach, and we're having, I think, a considerable impact. And it's because of you. If you have supported Free Speech TV up to this point, whether it's financial, or if you can't afford to give financial support, whether it's simply, sharing the word with your friends and getting 2 or 3 new people to watch Free Speech TV, and I know that's happening. I'm hearing from callers all the time. Hey, I just discovered your program. Somebody told me about it. That's how that impact is spreading. So everything you give today will be doubled with Andrew's $10,000 match. With a $20 gift, you have your choice between the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or the I'm Voting Are You car magnet. With a $50 gift, you have your choice between the Just Effing Vote tote bag and the Free Speech TV webcam cover. With a $75 gift, uniquely, you can get the Thom Hartmann Program mug with my face on it. With a $100 gift, there's the Free Speech TV face masks. With a $125 gift, or $120 gift, excuse me, you have your choice of 4 options. The social distancing kit, which is the 2 Free Speech TV face masks and the Free Speech TV branded hand sanitizer. The Just Effing Vote t-shirt. The Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt. Or my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, which exposes how the Republicans have figured out that they can't win elections except by cheating. And I just go through chapter and verse about how they cheat and the long history of that in the United States. With a $240 gift, you can join us on Free Speech TV, or join us, in a Zoom call, and or join me on a Zoom call with a small number of other people, and we'll talk about the things we can't talk about on the air, or that we do, as the case may be. With a $360 gift, there's the Free Speech TV face mask, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, Just Effing Vote tote bag, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, Just Effing Vote t-shirt, and with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and we'll see you here. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Please call now. It's so important during a really critical time like this. Our democracy is teetering on a knife's edge. It's so important that we have media, progressive media, that's telling the truth about what's going on in America. And not just telling the truth, acting in some cases as a nexus for information. Amy Goodman's program, my program, Randy Rhodes, David Sonali. I mean, there is such great programming on this network with such important information that is so critical, frankly, to the preservation, the survival of democracy in this country. I've been concerned about the rise of fascism on this program for 16 years, but now it seems like it's right in our face. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help us keep this extraordinary television network on the air. Coming up on this week's Science Revolution, how do we stop authoritarians like Trump and Bolsonaro from killing more people in this pandemic? Trump and Bolsonaro, the presidents of the United States and Brazil, are essentially refusing to do anything consequential about an epidemic that is killing massive numbers of their own country's citizens. Bill Freese drops by. He's the science policy analyst with the Center for Food Safety on the newly finalized federal regulations on GMOs. And Beyond Nuclear's Paul Gunter also drops by on how America is unprepared for a nuclear accident during this pandemic. Find the Science Revolution wherever you get great podcasts. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Sean was just telling me that if Don Jr. and Eric go up to Alaska, she supports the right to arm bears. Yeah, this is an old bumper sticker and a good one. By the way, in a new Quinnipiac University poll, they are finding in Texas that Joe Biden and Donald Trump are neck and neck. Now, that's interesting. Paul in Glenside, Pennsylvania. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind today? Oh, Paul just hung up just as I put him on the air. Sometimes people try to unmute their phone or something and hit hang up by accident. Let's try Catherine in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Hey, Catherine.
Hi. I'm proposing that we engage the 25th Amendment to the Constitution because this man is clearly unfit to be president, and he has a form of mental illness called character disorder called sociopath, and his fascist behavior certainly would qualify him.
I agree with your diagnosis, Catherine. The problem with the 25th Amendment is that it has to be initiated by the vice president, and it requires a majority vote of the cabinet. And the cabinet, these guys are all getting rich, with Donald Trump. I mean, you've got just a whole bunch of grifters. You got Elaine Chao, who's in charge of transportation, and her family she's a multimillionaire. She's, Mitch McConnell's wife. Her family's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. They own a shipping business, and she's shoveling money to her own company. You've got Betsy DeVos, who's a billionaire and the Amway billionaire, and for years and years and years, she's been trying to destroy public schools. She has succeeded in Michigan in privatizing half the schools in that state. And she is taking money away from public schools all over the country and giving it to for-profit and religious schools. You got Wilbur Ross, who said he was a billionaire. Forbes busted him. He's not. He's only worth about $800 million. And Forbes ran an article calling him a grifter and saying that, he was involved in all these shady deals. He's our Secretary of Commerce. You've got, the guy who runs the EPA is a former coal lobbyist. The guy who runs Interior is a former oil lobbyist. Mark Esper, the Secretary of Defense, a former defense lobbyist. The cabinet is getting rich, or in the case of Betsy DeVos, fulfilling their lifelong dreams, and they are not going to vote Trump out. And of course, Mike Pence, there's no way that he's gonna call the cabinet together and propose removing Donald Trump from office. So sadly, Catherine, I understand your concern, but sadly that can't be. It's not going to happen.
I'm still in favor of a social movement to propose it, even if it isn't possible to make it happen. That at least Trump knows that people are considering this or wishing for this.
Yeah. Well, I think we did that with the impeachment. I mean, he has been impeached. He just hasn't been removed from office. But I get your point, and I honor it, and I agree with it. Ronnie in New Berlin, Wisconsin. Hey, Ronnie, what's on your mind today?
Hi there. Love your show. One of the phrases that I've heard a lot kind of in the last, at least 3 years is, but especially recently, when you say fascism arrives draped in the flag and holding a Bible. I'm curious as to who said that and what was the historical background going on at the time.
I believe it was Sinclair Lewis in the mid-20s or maybe early 30s in a book called It Can't Happen Here, in which Buzz Winthrop, if I'm remembering who's who, he had a character who was a newspaper editor in Vermont, and a right-wing populist was elected president on a theme of making America great again and Christianity. And that president then begins cracking down on newspapers after referring to them as the enemy of the people, begins shutting down newspapers. And Winthrop, as I recall, was the newspaper editor. He flees to Canada and basically leads the resistance against this American president. And I'm not sure that phrase comes from the book. Probably one of our listeners knows better than me, or it's something you could just plug into DuckDuckGo and see. I believe, though, that that's a comment that he made, but it may be somebody else. It might have been H.L. Mencken, or somebody else from that era. But it was the first couple decades of the 20th century is where it came from, Ronnie.
That is shocking. That's shocking how it is so representative of today.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it really is. It really is, and it's kind of grim. Thank you for the call, Ronnie. It's nice to hear from you. Richard in San Jose. Hey, Richard, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. This is regarding the mail-in votes. And am I correct in that all of the votes, mail-in or otherwise, are still run through a voting machine, which is the die bolt, which is really a problem that we're going to have.
They're run through scanners, and they're just like tests are in high school and college and probably elementary school nowadays.
Are they still using the die bolt machine?
I don't know. It's really up to each individual state, and whether they're buying their scanners from Diebold or whether they're buying them from somebody else, I don't know. What I've been saying for a long time and continue to push is that the scanners that are used for mail-in ballots and for many ballots, there are a lot of people who vote on paper these days across the United States, that those scanners should be owned by the government, not leased from these companies, and that the software that is run in those scanners should be open source. The source, anybody should be able to examine the source. Right now it's considered a trade secret. And, the guy who does a really good job of talking about this in like super depth, super wonky depth, is Brad Friedman. And with his show, The Bradcast, which is on KPFK in Los Angeles. And it's a podcast you can get. And he's got a website as well.
One more question for you. Yeah. Are you related to Johann Hartmann?
No, I'm not. No. My grandfather and his three brothers, when they left Norway, their last name was actually Sorensen, and their middle name was Hartmark, which was their mother's name, and their mother's last name. And when they came through Ellis Island, none of them spoke English, and Uncle Tom, the oldest, was also drunk. He was an alcoholic, and he was in his early 20s. The rest of them were all teenagers. And so the best we can figure out as a family is he got about as far as the Hartmark part, and the officer, thinking he was speaking German, he was Norwegian, put it down as Hartmann. And so there you go. But I have very few Hartmann relatives outside of the people who are my grandparents. My dad had two sisters, and but actually their last names are not Hartmann. So basically it's just us. It's myself, my three brothers, and our families. But anyhow, Richard, I need not go through my family history. Thanks for the call. Ron in Tacoma, Washington. Hey, Ron, what's on your mind today?
Well, Tom, I'm happy to get through. I've been listening for years. This is the first time I've been able to get through. I got two things I want to tell you. Number one is about Trump's objection to mail-in voting. Doesn't he understand that United States military personnel stationed overseas have been voting by mail since, I think, World War II? We're talking millions and millions and millions of people have voted by mail from overseas bases, and there's never, ever been a problem. So where is he?
24% of all Americans who voted in the last presidential election voted by mail.
Okay, but
this has been going on, as you correctly say, Ron. It has been going on forever. Mail-in voting is probably as old as the Republic.
Okay.
The reason Republicans don't want mail-in voting is because one of the main strategies that they use for voter suppression is making you wait in line for hours and hours and hours by limiting the number of voting places or sending the broken or dysfunctional voting machines to polling places where there's a lot of Democrats. And they can't do that with mail-in voting. The second way that they suppress the vote is by removing people from the voting rolls. And if everybody knows that 6 weeks out from the election, they're going to get their ballot in the mail and their ballot never comes, they've got another 5 weeks to call the Secretary of State and say, what the hell happened? Send me a damn ballot. And, the Republicans don't like that either. So the two principal techniques that they use for voter suppression both get defeated by mail-in voting. And that's why Trump and the Republicans are all hysterical about it, Ron.
Can I bring up one more thing? The evangelicals talk about the book of Revelations, all about the end of the world. The book of Revelations has nothing to do with the end of the world. Book of Revelations was written for the people of that time. I have a book here in my hand. It's called Revelation, God and Satan in the Apocalypse, written by Professor James Callis, which lays it out. John the Revelator is sitting in prison on the island of prisoner. He writes a letter out to his followers telling him the Emperor Domitian is a dirty, rotten, lousy, no good so-and-so.
Yeah, he thought he was imprisoned on the Isle of Patmos or exiled on the Isle of Patmos, and he literally thought that was it and that the beast was the Roman Empire. You're absolutely right, Ron, at least from the histories that I've read. Thank you.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And by the way, this whole theory of the rapture, that's only 200 years old. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Robbie in Portland, Oregon. Hey, Robbie, what's up?
Yeah, I was wanting to touch base. First off,
hey, before you do, Robbie, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I know you're real active in progressive activism and whatnot. I'm wondering if you've been to any of the protests or the demonstrations in Portland and have any stories to tell us about them.
That's actually what I was wanting to update you on. Tonight's the 6th night. I'm going to be out there. I've been there Friday at Rosa Parks. Yesterday we were out, and this is actually what I was wanting to tell you is we're getting co-opted right now, and there's a lot of stuff on the airwaves. I want to tell the liberal listeners about this. First point is whenever it gets brought up, because the news, as you know, is doing their best to try to say that we're violent protesters. We're protesting.
As they always do, by the way.
Right, to delegitimize us. And then my dad is he's taken all this liberal news, and we were talking yesterday, and he was like, it just doesn't. What does it do for the cause? And the very notion of the news making people question what is this doing for the cause is delegitimizing it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yep.
I'll get back to what's going on here in Portland. We got co-opted. Yesterday, there's police plants. This is speculation, but when you do some research into the people that were leading it yesterday, or 2 days ago, actually now, they have been very close with the police. And it wasn't until some people did some more digging that they found out that they're actually whoever was leading it 2 days ago on Sunday is a part of the police. And they're trying to turn it into a parade. They bring out this really weird truck. It's got American flags all over it. Anyway, so remember the Blackout Tuesday? Did you hear about this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Blackout Tuesday was a hashtag that was set up on yesterday. It told nobody knows where it came from, but it got called out right away by the real activists. Blackout Tuesday was passed, and they're saying, hey, for all of Tuesday, don't post anything on social media. Just post black squares. Just post empty black squares and nothing, because it's going to mess up the algorithm, and then black voices will be heard. That was a lie. That was a lie used by the police. Basically, the activists were like, no, actually, you should be amplifying black voices right now. Use your platform. Tell us about the protest. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to stop the information being spread and shared about where we're going.
So basically, they were saying, don't tweet anything of consequence, of value. Don't tweet anything that has meaning. You know who co-opted and basically destroyed the Occupy movement, particularly in New York City, was the Revolutionary Communist Party. This cult that follows this guy in New York that is pseudo-Maoist. and they started the whole thing of talking and talking back, and no leaders, except that there actually were leaders, but they were always RCP leaders. And so be very aware of that. Do some research into that. Those guys, they operate under a whole bunch of different names. World can't wait and stuff like that. That was the name they were operating under back in 2003 when they bamboozled me and a few other people, into participating in things that they were doing. We thought that they were a legitimate group, and it turned out it wasn't. Robbie, I got to run.
Remember the communist.
Thanks for the call.
Okay.
Yeah, keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes open, and keep up the great work. We'll be back. It's coming up on 10 minutes before the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Stick around. We'll be right back. Thom Hartmann here. Did you know that Chief Justice John Roberts, back when he worked for Ronald Reagan, came up with a way that Congress and the White House could get around the Supreme Court? Specifically, they were trying to blow up Roe v. Wade and Brown versus Board, but it could be used by Democrats right now. It's fascinating. It's in my new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, available wherever fine books are sold. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Lonnie in San Mateo, California. Hey, Lonnie, what's up?
Oh, hi, Tom. I was wondering if you could tell me...
Lonnie, I can barely hear you. You need to get your mouth right next to your microphone.
Okay, there. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Well, if Medicare for All was passed, and then everyone in the country had Medicare or health care coverage, it seems to me like there's just not enough primary care providers to go around.
Well, the medical profession has expanded significantly the responsibilities and powers of people who used to be purely subordinate to physicians. Here in Oregon, and this is the case in many states, nurse practitioners and physician's assistants can actually open their own private practices. In some cases, they may need the supervision of a physician, but that's really more in principle than in practice. Just somebody signing off on what they do. They can do minor surgery. They can do diagnoses. They can admit people to hospitals. They can prescribe medications, including serious medications, cancer drugs, painkillers, things like that. So while the American Medical Association has spent the better part of the last 50 years trying to limit the number of doctors in order to keep pay up, and there are still limits on the number of people medical schools can take if they want to have AMA certification, which is absolutely necessary, there are other alternatives. And so frankly, I'm not so concerned about that. I don't think that will be a problem, frankly. But thanks for the call, Lonnie. We do need to be thinking about these things. Ed in Jackson, Tennessee. Hey, Ed, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Hey, do you mind if I read a little quote here from John Adams, and it applies to our problem now with our criminal injustice system and mass incarceration.
If it's less than a sentence or two,
talk about it. Listen to this. It is more important that innocence should be protected than it is that guilt be punished. For guilt and crimes are so frequent in this world that all of them cannot be punished. When innocence itself is brought to the bar and condemned, especially to die, the subject will exclaim, "It is immaterial to me whether I behave well or ill, for virtue itself is no security." And if such a sentiment as this were to take hold in the mind of the subject, that would be the end of all security whatever. Now, John Adams
Where'd you
said
get that from,
1770. Ed? And also, you know what Blackstone's
Ed, what's the source
is.
for that?
I just Google Blackstone's ratio on Wikipedia. Do you know what Blackstone's ratio is?
No, I don't. I know about Blackstone's Law Dictionary, but...
Okay, well, this is what it means. All presumptive evidence of felony should be admitted cautiously, for the law holds it better that 10 guilty persons escape than one innocent party suffer. But
and that's the ratio. Yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah, and Benjamin Franklin even took it to, it is better that 100 guilty persons should escape than one innocent suffer.
Yeah. And there was a time in this country where that was considered, really, really important stuff. And thank you for that. Thank you very much. Eric in Erie, Pennsylvania. Hey, Eric, what's up?
Hey, good afternoon, Tom. I don't know, you tell me, but I think maybe we all just witnessed the most overt and direct violation of the Establishment Clause with Mr. Trump's little walk on the wild side there. It had shades of Netanyahu shelling Gaza and the burning of the Reichstag. You got Trump clearing the path with military force and weaponry, marches over, flanked by the top law enforcement official. He's got his Himmler there. He's got Martin Bormann and all of his political people, and his little blondie press PR lady there is his Goebbels. And he just does nothing but take a stance on a particular sect's land while holding up a very specific book as if to wave it over the congregation. I mean, he didn't even make a speech about faith in general, where U.S. presidents, will acknowledge all of the various major faiths whenever they're teetering into that territory. Yeah. He just stood up there, held the book, and declared himself the Messiah. It's as deep a violation of the Establishment Clause as I've seen in my lifetime. What do you think?
I don't disagree with you, Eric. I don't think it's a legal violation of the Establishment Clause, which says that Congress shall, establish no religion for the United States of America. But it's a moral violation of it. It's a violation of it in principle. I completely agree. Vic in Stockton, California. Hey, Vic, what's up? We have 1 minute.
Real quick. I know the left has so few countervailing powers left. This is my idea. I want your thoughts on. Union of Concerned Scientists clock. We need a new one. It should be called the Endangered Democracy clock. Number 2. We got to get after FreedomWorks. We got to use that scorecard against FreedomWorks because we got to tell people, everyone who votes those Republicans, they're voting against them. And number 3, regarding Trump, we got to say, you know what, folks, this is what you get every time you vote Republican. Take your comments off the air. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Vic. I think you're absolutely right. I think you're absolutely right in all regards. David in Searcy, Arkansas. David, you got something you can fit in 40 seconds?
Yes, I believe that the protesters, in an attempt to avoid these rioters and fakers and stuff, that they should open up the platforms of the sports stadiums where they could all gather inside those peacefully, not have to be marched. The cost will be cut down. They could use that as a platform to set out and possibly form a article.
I understand your sentiment, David, but the point of civil disobedience, and that's really what we're seeing here, is disruption. And, not destruction, but disruption. And when society gets disrupted, society tends to pay attention. And if everybody goes to a sports stadium, there's no disruption unless there's a football game going on. But I understand your sentiment. And thank you for the call. And thanks so much for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It doesn't happen. It doesn't survive if you don't get involved. Tag, you're it. We'll see you tomorrow. Be good to yourself and those around you. Have a great day.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.